Well, the Marikana funding saga continues. That's as the miners' lawyers struggle to find someone to pay their legal fees. Let's chat now to Paul Hoffman from the Institute for Accountability in Southern Africa. Paul, good morning and thank you very much for your time. We saw the ruling by the Constitutional Court yesterday basically saying, no, they can't really make a judgment around the issue of funding for the miners in the Marikana inquiry. So Dalimpofu has lost out, they're out in the cold. What other recourse could they have?
Well, morning Dan and morning to your viewers. I don't think that the news is as gloom and doom as some of the commentators have portrayed it. Remember, this appeal was only about interim funding pending a review which is still waiting for a date of hearing in the High Court. So there's a final review which is still coming, and the Constitutional Court was very careful to say that its judgment of yesterday should not be read as anticipating the outcome of the main review and the final relief that has been sought in that review.
When is that
review? It is so that
Paul,
they will not get
review?
funding straight away.
When is that review due again?
That review is pending in the High Court against the Minister of Justice and Legal Aid South Africa, and it can still be followed through on by the lawyers, and they should in fact be asking for an urgent date for hearing in that matter. Because at the end of the day, the question is, does Section 34 of the Bill of Rights, which says everybody has the right to have their disputes fairly determined in an objective tribunal, that right needs to be unpacked and considered in the context of a final review, not in the context of an interim review. There are technical and legal good reasons for not trying to anticipate what will happen in a final review. And in the meantime, the press has picked up on this story, and I see in this morning's Times that the editorial says that the state has a moral duty to help the Marikana families, and that when President Zuma announced the Marikana Commission of Inquiry under Judge Farlam, he said that it would get to the bottom of the tragedy. And they suggest that it's time for President Zuma to put his money where his mouth is, but in fact what is required is that he put our money where his mouth is.
Paul, just on that, just on that, in the ruling at the Constitutional Court, I just want to read something for you here roundabout about fairness. Basically, the Constitutional Court was saying that the Commission's search for truth also serves indispensable accountability and transparency purposes. Not only do the victims of the events investigated and those closely affected need to know the truth, the country at large does too. So ordinarily, a functionary setting up a commission has to ensure an adequate opportunity to all who should be heard by it. Absent of a fair opportunity, the search for truth and the purpose of the commission may be compromised. My reading is that the functionary who set up the commission, therefore the president of the country, is the one who should say, yes, we can fund this or no. Why go through all this rigmarole of court hearings?
Yes, one hopes that the hints that are there, you'll remember when the judge in the High Court refused the interim relief, he encouraged the parties, and that's not only President Zuma and the Minister of Justice and Legal Aid South Africa, but also Lonman, who is the employer of the people who are now sitting without legal advice because they've run out of funding. All of those parties could actually, with a little bit of moral fortitude and rectitude, they could put their heads together and come up with a method of reasonably funding representation so that there is a fair result in the Farlam Commission of Inquiry. If interested parties are kept away from participation simply because they haven't got funding, then the credibility of the findings and the opportunity to get to the bottom of the issues around who is to blame for the tragedy at Marikana will become blurred and lost. And so it is an important issue, And I do not read this judgment as being the final slamming of the door in the faces of those who are seeking legal assistance or funding from the state. I believe that the review, as a final review, may yet come to an interpretation of the Bill of Rights that is helpful to Advocate Mpofu's clients and those who rely on them for support.
Thank you very much. That's Paul Hoffman from the Institute for Accountability in Southern Africa.
News that moves. eNCA.com.